Welcome back to another episode of the Autonomy podcast, and it is me on my Jackie Jones today, going through a specific subject. I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are having a lovely week. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe and like to our Spotify podcast, and also we have the vlogs going out on a regular weekly basis now, as well as the Traveling Fit Pro. So please, if you haven't head over to YouTube, please go and check out YouTube. Our Traveling Fit Pro vlogs will be live, so please go and show your love there also. So today we're going to speak about the difficult conversations that you're going to need to have on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Now, the context that we're going to speak about today is normally when in a dieting phase, but equally this transcends into all kind of difficult conversations. Now, for me, I really, really hate having these conversations, but it's something I've learned to do in the bid for self-efficacy or the bid for self-improvement. There's always going to be in which everyone has their opinions on certain topics, or they have their opinion of what should be right and what should be wrong. They have an opinion on what is the order and what is chaos. And everyone psychologically will have different boundaries that they place upon themselves from all different facets. Those difficult conversations in work about how someone's treating you, those things in a nightclub when someone tries to hit on you, having those difficult conversations. And then also from a changing of behavior standpoint, when you are changing and looking to change your behavior in food, health, and fitness, and needing to start to set some rules and guidance around how other people act with you, what they have around you, and what you really filter and have for yourself. For me, the first difficult conversation that I really ever had to have was when I was younger and when I started my first diet. So when I first started my first diet, I was living at home. I must have been like 14 or 15, and I was reading the book, The 4 Hour Work Week. Now, for me, this book was the first ever real book that I'd ever read from a fitness perspective from Tim Ferriss. It was all had lovely, crazy shit in this book around how to make females multiply orgasm, how to hold your breath underwater for 3 minutes, and then most importantly, out of all those things, it had how to lose like 20, 30 pounds in 30, 60 days, whatever it was. It was really, really a book of jack of all trades, and a master of some as well. So he'd worked with Houdini to hold his breath. I don't know who he got the information from to make females orgasm multiple times, but either way, very, very useful stuff for future Nathan. But when we were looking at dieting, I took lots of guidance from this. I was really excited about it. It gives you clear guidelines and clear things that you need to go through. And I followed it. I went to the shops. I was 14 or 15. I was like, Mum, I need to go and get this food. So to start this diet, I really want to kind of get in shape. I'm, fat. I feel like fat. She's always been quite supportive of everything. So, on the logical side of things, it was really easy to kind of start that. We'd go to the shop, we'd get the foods. But the problem is that, my mum and dad, both working. My dad would come home from school because he was a school teacher at that time, and he would cook the dinner for the family. He's always been like not a stay-at-home dad, but he's always been someone that had done the cooking, enjoyed that, and he was from a family of people who love to cook. Like my auntie Audrey, she was a phenomenal cook and loved food and taste and flavors and stuff like that. But they all came from big backgrounds. If we're going to keep it a buck 20, we've come from a big background of food being massive, grandma being quite large in terms of obesity, and most of the family were struggling with obesity at that time. But that's what they did. That's how they interacted with food. That's how they bonded, and that's fine. And that's okay. But he obviously utilized that within our own family dynamic, and basically, was the guy who was cooking the dinners, making sure that mum was fed, because mum was the breadwinner. If we're going to keep it really, really, full, she'd come in. She has a job that she loved doing every single day. She'd be the first out the door. She'd be the last in every single day, and she'd do these things. And then because of the roles within the family, that meant dad was going to cook, and dad was going to kind of do some of that stuff when he got home from school at like 3:30. So he was the one that kind of did all the cooking, and he took that responsibility on and took great joy from it. So when it came to me making this decision to now, cook certain foods, it was really a big resistance for him. He was the guy who was like, I've got stuff from the supermarket for the week, and then I'll cook this on a Monday, do this on a Tuesday type of guy. And it just whatever kind of felt natural to him, he would cook for the family because there's never any need. My mum likes every food, I like every food, and it's never been any type of resistance. So when it came to me then barking my orders around this specific diet, it caused this clash where we tried to make things work in the first couple of weeks, and where he would still cook, but he would give me smaller portions, or I wouldn't have the rice, or I wouldn't have like specific things that he gave. And every single time I made adjustments to this, I could feel like there was a brewing nature to his frustration, until one day in which I came into the kitchen when he was cooking this food, and I just seen basically the olive oil tub just being poured directly into this meal. And I went mad, as a 14-year-old kid who was like really wanted to look after himself, and wanted to stick to this diet very well. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, you know the calories in olive oil. Why are you doing that? He's like, because it tastes good, and your mum's had that for years, and we're not changing anything just for this fucking stupid diet. And then at that moment, we had that conversation where I said, well, I'm gonna have to cook my own food then, or I don't want the food, and I stormed off. And then I came back in. Mum tried to regulate, as she would do. She was a peacemaker, because she could see that I was frustrated, that I wanted to make a change, and he was doing something that would directly correlate against that. But also, she was not wanting the kitchen or the family time to be messed up. So it resulted in him basically just saying, from a distance, fuck off. And if you don't want my food, or you want to change my food, you're gonna have to make your own. So from that conversation onwards, I said, fine, cool, I'll make my own. I'll do that. And then even when I was doing my own stuff, there would always be, oh, you're using the kitchen when I need to use it. Or, oh, why are you cooking it like that? Why are you doing like this? Why are you doing like that? And there was always this resistance, until like one day I just said, Dad, like, you've moved away from cooking my food, which I really appreciate. But now you're just commenting on what I'm eating all of the time, and you're commenting on like how it's not great for me and all that type of stuff. But equally, I've lost 5 kilos already, and that's important to me. And that, if you want to keep making comments, just don't. It's not worth your time, because I'm not interested, and you're just doing it to make yourself, be more angry. It's no point. So we had that conversation, and to be honest, that wasn't the last of the difficult conversations. Over the years, I've been on various diets, photo shoot preps, whatever it was, and there was always this resistance to this specific subset, which was dinners are him, the dinners what he's making. And when I was moving away from that, it became a thing. So every time I diet, I'd effectively just not go around anymore. I'd just not go and spend time there. But then we had these conversations where, he the more I stuck to it, the more he could see that I was losing weight, the more he could see that I was diligent, the more he then accepted that this was something that I was doing. And that's where the difficult conversations come in. I don't think any problem ever gets solved with one difficult conversation. I think the difficult conversation is the gateway into people understanding and being more understanding, and then being more, less resistant to change. Because when that time happens over and over again, and you don't relapse, and you don't, whatever you're trying to be ethical about, and you're trying to say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, the more you do it, people start around you going, all right, fuck yeah, he's doing that. Okay, cool. Like, I'll leave him to it. But the more, like in some of the diets, when I'd, go for a snack at 9 p.m. and I'd come back with the chocolate bar, he'd say to me, the fuck are you doing? Like, you've just cooked kidney beans and veggies, and you're ruining our family time, but then you're smashing out chocolate in the evening. And then that was like a problem for him, because it was like, you're changing the whole family dynamics, but equally you're smashing chocolate in the evening. That's not great for you anyway. So I learned that the difficult conversations was like this starting way to understanding other people, and a good way to get your point across, so that you can start, on whatever journey that you're on, and for people to understand you, and for people to support you. But the moment that you start going against that self-efficacy, or you start going against the thing that you're really partitioning for, and you're starting to you're really fighting for, the more people just don't believe you that you're doing it. And therefore it just becomes an inconvenience, because they just see that you're making hard work of something that was working beforehand, but you're not getting any benefit from it. So that was like the first ever difficult conversation that I had. And throughout my years, most of the difficult conversations have come around food, and then come around work. Because the reason why difficult conversations have to come up is that people have different priorities. Different people have different thought processes. So if someone believes that you should work a 9 to 5, and then another person believes that if you're an entrepreneur and a CEO of a business, you work more. And then there's always this conflict between what someone believes is true, and then what you believe is your priority. And the more that you have your priorities, and the more you stick to them, and the more you do them on a day-to-day basis, you'll see where the other people are around you and how they react to that and how they respond to that. Because not everyone has the same opinion as you, and that's absolutely fine. But the gateway to understanding is communication. And if you don't communicate and you don't have those conversations and you don't talk about things, then it leaves it into the imagination of someone else. It leads to the interpretation of someone else to what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. Like when we were working with autonomy and like working within the business, one of the biggest things, and I did a post on this the other week, is that a lot of people try and keep their diet shush. They try and keep their diet silent. They don't want to tell people that they're doing it because they'll start that resistance process off really quickly. Your husband or your wife has seen you dieted 12 times before. It creates a load of inconvenience because the shopping gets different, the cooking gets different. But then they also see you then fall off 12 times, and they always see you then revert back to normal. So then when that 13th time comes, they've had enough. They don't want to see you fail anymore, but they also don't want the inconvenience. So therefore, they start making comments. They start, passively aggressively saying things, or they start like just shushing you in terms of, oh, just don't talk about it, but you'll just be back on, your normal shit next week. You'll be on Domino's next week, or whatever it is. And to their best intentions, they've just seen what they've seen, and they've seen you not do those particular things time and time again. And that's totally normal. This whole element of like getting in shape and staying in shape is a task in which it takes multiple attempts. I don't know anybody that's dieted the first time and then been like, bam, staying in shape for life, bang, yeah, it's great. It's actually a multiple attempt process. And if people have been around you and you've been one of those people that have had multiple attempts, and you've had multiple failed attempts, and you've tried and you've tried and you've put it on a pedestal, you've caused a ruckus one time because you wanted broccoli and no one had broccoli, or you've caused a ruckus because you wanted to cook your own food or whatever, and then they've seen you revert back to where you were before, they're only going off what you've done before, and they can't really be blamed for that either. However, there always comes a point in which that 13th time might be the last. And if it is something of your priority and it's something that you feel is important, then it's up to you to continue that attempt and continue that quest and journey onto the goal that you have. And further down the line, the more conversations that you have about it, the more resistance you remove by talking, the less negatives that come from the other individual as well. Like I've sucked at dieting. I've sucked at home. I've sucked at in university. I've sucked at when I was at working life. When I was a PT, I just sucked in general at dieting. And every single time someone looked at me and was like, "Oh, you're going to diet again? Yeah, okay, cool. You were dieting 6 weeks ago." And there was always that level of resistance. But I kept on trying, and I kept on telling them why it was really important. I need to crack it this time. I need to make sure that this is good because it makes me feel better when I do this. And every single time, I'd explain my rationale for why. And people may not believe you, and they don't need to believe you for you to be able to do your job. They need to just get out the fucking way and stop making it hard for you. But that comes through that communication and resilience to a trial and trial and trial over and over again. So whether it is the first time that you've dieted, whether it is a huge level of resistance, whether it's the 20th time and your family scoff at you again for saying the D word, and they just don't believe that you're going to do it, but all they can see is the inconvenience that it's causing, from the supermarket shop to the cooking at home to the Tupperware that's in the fridge, or to the thought process, or you talking about it a little bit more than usual. They're not meant to believe you if you have showed them that you haven't done it right last time. Like if someone went broke 7 times and then they're like now on 7 different business ventures, on that 8th one, people are going to be like, "Oh, you're just going to go broke again." But the only person that can believe in that and believe in that 8th time is the last is going to be you. So it comes down to those conversations. And I think another one is working life. Working life is quite typical, in which you'll be funneled down a pathway based on your parents, based on your friends and family, based on the media, of what is appropriate from like a working percentage time. I was luckily enough to be, and sadly enough, to be engulfed in an environment that was all hell every day. It was, you bring your best every day, and you don't stop and you work 12 hours a day and you hustle and you grind and you be the best person for yourself, but you also be the best person for your clients. And I learned very quickly that this didn't really suit to relationships with people that had different opinions. And I can probably say out of, my early 20s, 21 to 27, a large component factor in why my relationships never worked was communication, but the communication based on work. Because I didn't communicate, I just did. And people had different impressions on what is feasible and what is real. So when I worked past 7 p.m., I'd be getting comments. When I didn't, when the last person I text on a day-to-day basis was my clients, next to my girlfriend who was lying in bed wanting some me time. It was hard to have those conversations and hard to just, not see it. Because in my mind, all I was doing the best thing for me and my priorities. And then, when I was aware to it, when I seen another person's perspective, when I saw the resistance from another side, I started to think, well, am I wrong? Is what I'm doing not great? Because inside of me, I knew 100% that what I was doing was the right thing. And I was convicted to working hard. I loved every moment of it. It made me full every single day from a purpose perspective. I was helping hundreds of people. But then when you get into bed with your partner, and then she's looking at you like, oh, so you're just going to go on your phone again? Or you're not getting enough time with me? Or you've worked the last, 40 days without a day off? You start feeling wrong. And you start feeling like what you're doing is not the norm. And I'm here to say that, if you're a hard worker and you love what you do and you like cracking on with shit, be that person. Don't let that other person put you in a box, because those boxes never keep you. You always outgrow them. If you're a type of person that grows and you like to develop yourself and challenge yourself, you'll always outgrow the box. And the thing that gets you through these times and the things that get you into a happier space, into a more like reasonable living standard, is the difficult conversations. But I think until you know where you're at and what you like and what you enjoy, it's almost hard to have those conversations because you're not even sure within yourself whether it's the right thing to do. I was exposed into that environment from a PT perspective and just did the do, or doing the do. I just worked and I did everything I needed to get my clients the best results possible. And it brought me back so much emotional happiness, so much physical joy, so much mental clarity, that I was working to the best of my ability with the skills I had. But I was around people that were clocking off at 6 p.m. Or I was sharing a house with an old rugby fellow of mine, Paddy, who is a school teacher, who came in from work 5:30, 6 o'clock, played FIFA, a couple of hours, made dinner, went to rugby training, came home, did that again. And that was his life. And that's what he clocked off. He clocked off from work at that time because that job is okay to do that. Had a school holidays off, bank holidays. Whereas in the same breath, I was in the same household as him. And I was coming in, and I was sure I was sitting on the sofa with him in the evening, but I was on my phone, on my laptop. I was doing work. And those resistances start to build up, not from his perspective, but if you're in a relationship or people just don't understand what your priorities are right now, it's up to you to make those clear. And if other people don't like your priorities, then that's where those conversations really hold its weight in gold. And now being, Jesus Christ, nearly 30 or 29, the more I've moved towards my priorities, the happier I've got. But also, the people around me have also changed. And also the people around me, the ones that understood what I was doing, I communicated well with, let me go and do me. They let me go and be whatever I wanted to be and the priorities that I wanted. But I think, looking back, 50% of that is because they were emotionally intelligent enough that to know who I was and how I worked and how I liked stuff. But 50% of that, the people that I was around, was because I had those not great, but very passive aggressive conversations with, because I didn't know how to have a hard conversation that was productive. Now I can have a very calm, chilled, hard conversation without breaking a sweat or even raising my voice, because I've practiced that, and I've practiced how to be clear in my intentions and what I want out of these scenarios and what I want out of the conversations or the relationship I have with that individual. No raising of the voice anymore. It doesn't even get to that point. But it always used to come to a spearhead with these difficult conversations, that you'd leave it, there'd be comments, there'd be, signs and warning signs that people didn't get on with those type of things. Even from a dieting perspective, there was warning signs that my dad didn't like what I was doing. There was warning signs that, on a Friday night when, the girlfriend at the time or whoever wanted to get a takeaway because that's what she normally did, she'd be huffing and puffing like we're not getting a takeaway because I'd be eating food from home. There was warning signs that I didn't know were warning signs at the time. I just thought, someone was just being pissy and they just wanted a takeaway that they couldn't have. But what it represented was there was this differences in priorities. And I handled these conversations pretty badly when at these times. I just feel like, what the fuck's your problem? Why are you huffing and puffing? Or why is it an issue that I work all of the time? Or for the other person would be like, you're working all the fucking time. We don't get time to spend together. And then when you do want to spend time together, you're tired. So therefore, how is this going to work? And that's where the formation of those conversations came in, because I was like, I feel I'm doing the right thing. I feel like I'm loving every part of my day. Sure, I'm tired. Like, who wouldn't be tired if you didn't have a day off in 90 days or didn't go on a holiday for a whole year or have a week off for a whole year? Of course you're going to be tired. But I loved every moment. I was waking up every single day with a smile on my face and drive to go and help people. Waking up at 4:30, getting to the gym for 6, doing four sessions, training myself, going for a coffee, waiting an hour, doing another couple of sessions, wait another hour, stick around in the gym with the boys, and then do another 3 sessions and then go home. And then prep for my food for the day, plan the evening, text clients, catch up on probably half an hour, 45 minutes of FIFA, and then back around every single day. And I loved it. But those conversations have to have, because you don't want to change your priorities, right? And this is where the reason why conversations like this have to happen, and the reason why I'm probably doing the podcast, is because I'm seeing far too many people not move towards what they want in the presence or the absence of other people, or getting the thought process of, hey, you need to make someone else happy, or having the thought process of, oh, I'm in the wrong. But if you work towards what internally drives you, and you're clear on your priorities and you're clear on what makes you happy, then you moving towards those things on what makes you fulfilled. I hate that word, move towards your happiness, but move towards fulfillment. And if you're getting those things, then you're not in the wrong. The understanding from another person is the wrong, is the interpretation of what you're doing is wrong. And people seem to leave this thing on the table that is their own happiness or own fulfillment or their own goals at the detriment to someone else's feeling. Going back to that dieting example, the risk of offending someone is probably one of the biggest reasons why I see on a week-to-week basis people don't go towards their goals. Now, the risk of offending someone and the nature of why you perceive it that way is so multifaceted, because you've got things like self-esteem. If you had high self-esteem, you'd care about yourself more than you'd care about someone else's feelings. It doesn't mean you don't care or that you're not compassionate, but you just care more about what you want to do and your goals, as opposed to what someone else's feelings about a particular subject. So it's multifaceted in its approach. It's got like self-esteem. It's about open communication. It's about desire and drive, and it's about understanding and being compassionate of someone else, and having empathy. And ultimately, having a desire to do what you want to do, move towards what you feel is right. And when people move away from that, they lose a lot of what inside tells them is right and moves more towards what the outside is telling them. And there'll always be this moment, and I've been here so many times, and I tell the story of the house, but I'll tell it again. It's like when you move to the external variables as opposed to the internal variables, there will be a moment where you go, holy fucking shit, what have I done? It's like the moment you wake up from a boozy night and you've woken up and you've rolled over to someone that you didn't really want to, or it was a whoops moment and you're like, where the hell am I? Who is she? And where are my pants? And you wake up to one of those moments eventually when that internal yawning or yearning reaches out so much. So, you could be trying to make someone else happy, but on the inside, you're demotivated about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You could be binge eating, you could be emotional eating, you could be fucking low mood, you could be not desired to do anything that you normally do, which create happiness. There's so many things that happen as like small trigger points along that internal clock of, just not having a desire to wake up, not doing things that you really enjoy, not having that get up and go, not eating particularly well or taking care of yourself. They're all like small little notches on the bedpost, to go back to that analogy, of signs and symptoms to say that you're not working on your internal variables, you're focusing on the external. And for me, this came at the cost of buying a house. It came at the cost of getting a dog. It came at the cost of being in a relationship that wasn't something that internally I wanted. Externally, my friends have got houses. My friends, being 28, 29, 28, 27, 28 at that time, all my friends are getting married, they got kids. And I felt that pressure, that external pressure. My mum and dad I've never ever said anything to me before about like, family or house or kids or something like that. But equally, they were always fine with it, and they were always encouraging of it. They were more resistant to me traveling or me giving up a job to go and do my own business than they were to me getting a house and a dog. Why? Because they've done the exact same thing. They've gone up the same ladder, so they're going to be more biased towards it being okay because they've gone through that same process like everyone else does. You'll see the lockdown dogs, you see the lockdown love really come through. You see the people buy the houses, then they get the dog, then they get the baby, then they get a new car, and then they go through this cycle. And having worked with thousands of people before, that shit doesn't make you happy. That shit makes some people happy who are internally motivated by that. But if you've just done it because it's the ladder, because your parents are forcing you to do it, because you're encouraged by other people around you to do it, and not internally what you really want, then you're working on the external as opposed to the internal. And well, for me, that moment where I, hypothetically woke up to someone, after a drunken night, that holy shit moment was, back end of 2020. Oh shit, it was this year. Well, yeah, it was this year. April, February, March, April time this year, I was seeing all these signs and symptoms. I was seeing all these things that I didn't like about myself. I was waking up and I was just wired, but I was so tired. I was emotionless. I didn't have any get up and go for anything that I enjoyed. I was doing no hobbies, nothing like that. I was waking up, working, and going back to bed. I was fantasizing about getting a house. I was fantasizing about getting a bigger house. I was fantasizing about getting a new car. All of these external metrics. So at one point, I just, I had that moment where I was working with a therapist because I was feeling those certain ways that, it just got to a point where she asked me like, well, why did you do that? Or what was the process of you buying that? Or what was the process of you getting that? Or what's the process of this relationship? And I didn't have an answer. I didn't have an answer of why I got the house apart from, oh yeah, it was just, it was the thing to do. I didn't want to live at my parents' house, so I got the house. And it's the thing you should do, right? But then for me, that then trickled onto a lot more difficult conversations. Probably the hardest conversation that I've ever had to have with my dog, saying, I'm going to move to Dubai because it makes me feel happy and I'm going to have to give you up. And that was a very difficult conversation. Obviously, it wasn't a conversation with me just telling her, sorry, as I was dropping her off at the foster parents' house, but equally having the difficult conversation about, not wanting to be in that relationship. It's so much easier. It's so fucking easy in comparison. And this may ruffle a few feathers, but it's so fucking easy to stay in a relationship that you don't want. It's so fucking easy to buy all these external things and still chase that happiness scale on external measures. It's so fucking easy to, let shit slide, even though internally you're feeling a certain way. And probably over the last 6 months, I've got incredibly good at having these difficult conversations. The closer and closer it gets to them actually being a difficult scenario and not leaving them long. And I think it was because of that moment of that relationship and deciding to move to Dubai, because I started thinking about, well, if it's my priority and it's something I truly want to do and I can financially afford to do it, or it's coming from the best place in my heart, then I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it well. And I think that whole fat loss thing and the whole difficult conversations with parents around food and, asking for their support or even speaking about dieting with loved ones to gain their support or their understanding, it's really easy to try and brush it underneath the cover. It's really easy to say, I'm not going to say anything. And then, when he puts the food on the table, I'm only going to eat half it and pretend that I'm full. Or I'm just going to pretend that I wanted the chicken salad at the restaurant. And believe you me, I've had hundreds of clients that have done exactly that. And guess what? All of them never got in shape. All of them. No one that ever had those type of behaviors ever got in shape. Because the difficult conversation is the way. And it's a practice, and I'm getting closer to making those decisions. Even had to make one recently. And it was a case of that in my head before it happened, it was a great scenario. It was, an idealistic situation. Let's call it a situationship because I like that word. An idealistic situationship. And as the weeks grew or the days grew, I started thinking and feeling that it wasn't what I thought it was. And it wasn't what I had in mind. And it wasn't serving me. I was more anxious. So the telltale signs were coming back. I was working way more to avoid the thought process. I was feeling less emotional. For me, being less emotional means like placid and not even feeling anything. So for me, that's a bad thing. When I feel emotion, it's actually really good because I'm just like a fucking iceberg otherwise. I was feeling like that was not my priority. It wasn't my priorities, and it wasn't something that was going to work. So instead of leaving it months like I'd done before and hoping things would get better, or hoping I'd be able to survive in it, or hoping that this would change, or hoping it'd be a one-off, I had that conversation and I prepared what I said before, what I was going to say beforehand, to make it easier for myself. And I'd recommend doing this if you're trying to talk to parents about dieting as well. But in all scenarios, the more consciously prepared you can be, the better in those moments when the emotions run high and you are kind of sad that things are kind of having to be this way. Don't get your words twisted and you get them right. And whilst, I felt a certain way and my emotions were not particularly, I was all over the shop because it was nice, but it wasn't the thing that I wanted. It was not right. So you have that conversation, you prepare what you're going to say, you say the things you're going to say, and then you roll with the punches. You embrace what another person's saying to you, but you stay firm to your decision because your decision is coming from the inside. And that's where it has to start. And it has to start with the conversations coming and the thoughts coming from on the inside. So, that requires, and I don't think everybody has the capability to feel what they truly desire. I think that as humans, we're really, really shit and really poor predictors of what makes us happy. And that's why happiness can't really be chased, in my opinion. But fulfillment can be, because fulfillment is about putting stuff out there as opposed to receiving something. And it's all that control element, is that if you put stuff out there and you push it out and you give it out, you control the narrative. You control what you get from it. Whereas if you're waiting for happiness to hit you in the face by buying something new or acting or waiting for happiness to happen to you, happiness is the same emotion or the same emotional wheel as lust, desire, anger, frustration. They're never lasting. They never last. You don't see fulfillment or purpose on an emotional wheel. Whilst they could be, purposeful or emotion filled or whatever you want to call it, fulfillment or whatever you can do, is that striving for putting stuff out there, putting your internal stuff forwards and first. You don't wait for that happiness factor to hit you in the face, which I don't believe happens. I think you manifest happiness by doing something to get it back. So having those conversations and putting yourself first will always be key. But that was a slight tangent, but I don't truly think that everyone has the ability to be receptive to their own feelings at the rate in which people go. And what I mean by that is that often this get up and go lifestyle, this running on repeat, running on a treadmill type of mentality, if your day is fucking Groundhog Day every day and you're just trying to survive. Nobody that does that type of lifestyle has that running treadmill in their brain all of the time, has the ability to feel or have those thoughts that lead to emotions, that lead to behavior, that lead to actions in the right considerable amount. They're almost waiting and working on emotion. So if you're feeling anxious because you're just anxious, you don't get to think about, okay, what did I think about to make myself anxious? You just feel anxious. You're just doing the do. And often there's a gap between people that are not super aware, and I've noticed it myself because I was in the state, is that there's something called the 5 areas, which is like, what's your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations, your actions, and your emotions. I think they're all the ones. But there's all 5 of them. Well, basically you're looking at your senses. And when you go through some type of therapeutic therapy, you often find that you'll have one of those areas that you're not particularly in tune with. In my case, I didn't know any of them apart from the actions at the beginning. So I was just doing, and I was just binge eating, and I didn't know why. And I didn't know. And some days I would, I'd just be tired, and I would be moody, and I would be, lying on the sofa. That's all I knew. But over time, when you stop playing in that treadmill of the life and you slow down a little bit and you become more aware and you start this whole process of listening on the inside, you can start then thinking about or seeing the thoughts that you have, which then lead to emotions, that lead to behaviors, that lead to actions. And you can start seeing what thoughts are coming in, what feelings are coming in, and then whether they're right for you or not. Because if those thoughts, which is in my case are really hard to kind of leverage and really notice, is that if these thoughts are negative and they're in the scenario that we're talking about, then it's never going to really lead to a positive outcome. But if the thoughts are positive and you're like, I'm doing it for me, my internal environment, it's for the higher priority, it's great for me, it's going to leave me in this position, I'm going to be body confident, I'm going to be visually better, whatever it is, even in a relationship or situationship standpoint, it's going to allow me to have more time on my own. I'm going to find someone that's going to, do X, Y, and Z, allow me to be me, blah, 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 blah. You find all the things that are thoughtful, are positive, and they generally lead to a positive outcome. So if you are in that situation where you feel like you want to have a difficult conversation, but you also feel a little bit lost within your direction, and you feel like maybe you don't know if it's the right idea for you, or you don't think it's you don't know truly with conviction that the decision that you're trying to make, whether it's dieting, whether it's the situationship that you're in, whether it's a new job, whether it's a house move, whether it's travel, whether it's buying a new house, getting a dog, whether you know that's the right move for you or not, you have to start with monitoring your own thoughts and your own feelings and your own emotions around it, and whether that is a good choice for you or not. And they're really the stepping stones into having those difficult conversations, because when you're more convicted, your self-efficacy will go up. When you're more convinced in yourself that it's the right idea and it's something that you can do, then your ability to portray that message to that person when you're having whatever difficult conversation it is will be better. Most people don't have those difficult dieting conversations because they, in the back of their mind, don't truly believe that they're able to keep up their end of the bargain. If we're keeping it buck 20. For you UK people, that means keeping it real. A buck 20 is an American slang. I love it though. Is that when you have those conversations, when you're like, I want to diet, I want to be in better shape, I want to be more confident, I want to get to this body desire. In the back of your mind, the reason why you're not convicted or you're not saying it with chest, or you're not having those conversations, is because it puts you on a accountability train. It puts you on an accountability method to be like, hey, you said you're going to do that, and then there's more people watching. Then there's more people, seeing what you're doing. And if you don't truly believe that you can do it, and I think over time you proved yourself that you can do that, and that's why these difficult conversations come in forms and phases. They come in small steps as you go. You start building up that self-esteem so you can have that really big conversation. At the beginning, that conversation around food may just be, can you just give me a smaller portion, please? I'm quite full, or I just don't want the rice today, just need the veggie curry and salad. And then the difficult conversation comes in a few months' time as well. Can you stop asking me to have seconds? It's making me really difficult to stick to my diet because I'm feeling like you're making me eat this food, and I feel guilty that I'm letting you down, but equally letting myself down. That conversation there might take 7, 8, 10 smaller conversations to build up that self-efficacy whilst you diet, whilst you get a little bit more positive, body positive, where you get more accountable to yourself, where you notch wins in your corner, so you can have those bigger conversations. Because I couldn't imagine 21-year-old Nathan, really low self-esteem, probably arguably still does, having the large conversation like I did a couple of weeks ago in that situationship, because he didn't truly believe that in whatever he was thinking. He didn't truly believe that that decision was right because he didn't know what was right for him. And then it comes down to those core beliefs like I am good enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm fear of failure, or whatever it is. Because if you feel that you're not good enough and you're attaching yourself to a situationship, which is slang for relationship, or something that is between relationship and being single, is that if you attach yourself to that, if you let go of that, then you confirm that you're not good enough in your own brain. So you don't want to let go of it because it confirms that you are a failure, or it confirms that you are not good enough if you believe that the other person is. So then you don't have that so you're more reluctant to have that difficult conversation because it confirms your core belief is true. And that's a really hard thing to do when you go up against your core belief and it wins. Or in your mind, the perspective at that time, it wins until you change your perspective and realize that you are good enough. that just person wasn't the right one, or they're not better than you, so therefore you are good enough, you're just not the right person. But there's just some things to consider there when it comes to having difficult conversations. I hope it's really useful. I don't expect everyone to go and sit down with whoever, if they're dieting or they're having a difficult conversation even at work, or people talking to you inappropriately, or your priorities are changing within your relationships, and you're feeling resistance on all points. I'm not expecting people to just go, right, okay, let's do this podcast, fucking let's have you. But I am saying that if you can get clear on what on the internal is saying, and you always work towards your internal motive, you will always feel better. Not in the short term, fucking shit, like taking a plaster off. But in the long term, you move towards that next step of you, that next step of what you wanted. And that's where we're at. That's where we need to be. Because if that relationship, that situationship, that diet resistance from family members are causing you to act a certain way that is not something that you want, then you're always going to stick in that cage. Whereas we want you to overcome things so that you can become the best version of yourself, that get the goals that you want. Because one thing that is amazing is achieving goals, is setting something out that your heart desires, or that your emotions desire, or that your brain desires, or that the life desires, and then going to do that particular thing, because that makes you satisfied, that makes you fulfilled, that has a purpose-driven lifestyle to it. As we know, one thing is that people go a bit cuckoo when they don't have purpose. So if you're always putting your purpose on the back burner, or other people's opinions, or other people's emotions, then you're always going to feel like that caged animal. And we want more and more people to take the step forwards. And ultimately, from a selfish perspective as well, is that this is exactly what autonomy means. Having control of your health and fitness, or having autonomy in your whole life, is having control of the variables that are at play. And if the variable is that you're currently not doing something because you're fearful of someone else feeling a certain way, that's not control. You're living your life through someone else, and that's reactivity. Whereas we want autonomy to be present within lives everywhere. So if you can say, I've got autonomy, which is control, how do I control the situation? Well, I have that difficult conversation. So to have autonomy means to have difficult conversations, because it's what's right for you. Hope that helps. Let me know if I'm chatting shit or not. Tag, like, share on Instagram, share on Spotify. If you want me to do any specific topics, let me know. But happy to kind of help you on this one. It's been more therapeutic for me probably than it has been for any of the listeners. So appreciate that, and on to our next episode.